Okay, we're starting project number 26 here. Now, number 26 is actually a pretty big assignment the way it's being done because we skipped the chapter on spreadsheets. We've touched on spreadsheets in the other chapters, but we haven't really done one project that really pulls all of it together in a single assignment. Big surprise, this is that assignment. Okay, so we're going to be working the assignment here is about online fraud. And so instead of using the made up numbers like textbooks always do, we're just going to go to the official data, okay? Because by that we're going to have real numbers. Now we are using numbers from 2022 because the numbers from 2023 are not in yet. They'll be in about the end of this month. So that's why we're using the 2022 report, if you're wondering why that is. So let's go ahead and open our assignment. And the first thing we're going to do up here is type in state. Tab, total number of victims. Tab. Now, this one's kind of confusing because when I start typing here, you're going to think that somehow I've lost it, the other information, and I haven't. Remember, we identify the cell we're in by the letter first and then the number. The cell is where the column and row intersect, okay? And so I'm going to be typing in this one here. It's going to look wrong for a little while, but then we're going to fix it, and it'll be really easy to do when we get to that point. Okay, so this, T-A-T-B. Okay. Now, I understand what it looks like here. We're going to do a couple of things in formatting here, okay? The first thing we're going to do is go ahead and select this entire row by putting the tip of the arrow on the number 1. Now, one thing that's always a problem with students in spreadsheets is when I say to go to a cell, they work really hard. I think they're trying to get the whole arrow into the cell. But you see, now I'm touching a line, and that's like the one place not to be. So when I say in a cell, I mean the tip of the arrow in the cell. So the tip of the arrow touching the number 1 right here. I'm going to go ahead and click right there. Good. Now I'm going to click on bold. Great. Still has that thing going on there. We're not quite done yet. Now I'm going to go format. I'm going to come down here to wrapping, and I'm going to select wrap, and you'll immediately see what it does. Okay. Now, both these columns are going to contain countable numbers. Okay. A countable number is a number that's used for counting, as compared to like a jersey number or something that isn't really used for counting. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go up here and I'm going to click directly on the letter B. Now there's two ways I can do this. I can hold the shift key and now click directly on the letter C. The other thing I could have done was came up here and put the tip of the arrow right there on the letter B, pressed and held and drug over. Now, one problem with doing that is you might wind up accidentally rearranging your rows because you haven't really done this much before. And that's okay. So let's go ahead and select all the way from B through G. So I clicked on B. I'm going to hold the shift key down and put the arrow right there on the G and click there. Great. Now, we're going to go ahead and left align these cells, okay? The reason we are, right align. Right align. The reason we are right aligning is because the cells are going to have countable numbers in them, and countable numbers are always lined up on the right. Okay, now what we want to do is find the top 10 states for total losses. And you can see right here on page number 26. And here are our top 10 states for total losses. And we're going to go ahead and type these in, okay? So I'm just going to California, Florida, and so back over here. Then I'll hit enter to go down. Florida. Enter. New York. In. And now I've got to go back and actually look what the others are. Just a second. Okay, now I've got all my states typed in. You'll note that I also included Kansas, not because Kansas is one of the top 10, simply because it's probably a little bit interesting to people to see where Kansas compares to other states. Okay? So, now that we've got our top losses, hold it. Stop. Now that we've got our top states here, we want to find out how many victims there were in each state. Now, as you're typing these numbers, do not type in the comma or any of that other stuff, okay? Before we do that, we're going to do something. We're just going to click right here. We're just going to put in a number, okay? That's all. Okay, now that we've done that, we're going to come up here, and we're going to, you know what, I think we're going to, yeah, we're going to do it. Okay, so I'm going to now click directly here on the letter B, okay, selecting all of this column. Now I'm going to come over here to the 1, 2, 3 and click on that, and I'm going to click on number. Now I have 5.00 in this column. I want to get rid of that 0.00 because we don't have any fractional victims. So I'm going to come over here to this one right here that says decrease decimal places. It has a little arrow pointing to the left, and I'm going to click twice. Okay, now it's done. Now don't bother putting in the commas. It's going to put the commas in for you, Katie. 766. See, it put that in for you. Okay, so it'll do that for the rest of these too. 42, 792, 792, and we can find these coming over here to our book on page number 25, where we have the total number of victims. Now, one thing to watch out for is the states don't always line up. The reason the states don't line up is because some places may have had more victims but not lost as much money. So you need to be very aware of what state you're putting in. They don't perfectly line up. Okay, so go ahead and finish putting in the states. And if you're not clear on where I got this from, it's this one right here, annual report. Okay, so go ahead and finish putting in the total number of victims all the way down to Kansas. Okay, now that we have all of our states keyed in here, I want to double check Alabama because that's some sort of weird Alabama and Arizona. So I'm going to double check those real fast. Okay, that was right. I just wanted to make sure it's a good example of where, the rankings don't quite match. Now we're going to go ahead and put in total losses by state. So I'm coming back over to here, and we're going back to that first page we were using. So you can see here, California, 2 billion. But before we put in any numbers, we're going to format this column. So let's go ahead and I'm just going to put in a number. It doesn't matter what number you put in, okay? So I hit a 5 and I hit enter. Now I'm going to select all of column C by moving the tip of the arrow to the C and selecting all of column C. Now I'm going to come up here. If it's real easy, I'm going to click on the dollar sign. Now again, I want to get rid of those zeros. So back. Great. That's done. Now you can click on this cell and just hit backspace to get rid of that 5 and go ahead and put in the real numbers. 2012, 806, 806, 866. And I just hit enter to go down. Okay. Now, if your column is too narrow, I'm going to show you what happens. If it's okay, that works. In Excel, you'll get hashtags. Note how I'm adjusting the column width. I went directly between the columns here until I get those two parallel lines. And what I do, I press and hold the left mouse button, and I can adjust the column width right there. 8444, 972, 494. Enter. And just work your way down. Try to use the number pad on the right if you have the number pad available. It's a lot easier. And I did something wrong here. That's clearly wrong. Okay. 844. Aha. I went 84444. So if we need to correct something, we come up here to the formula bar. You see the FX there stands for formula. This is the formula bar. Click there and get rid of one of them. Then I'll hit enter again. And now it's fixed. So again, where you're getting those numbers from is right here. We're back on page number 26. Okay, so go ahead and finish putting in those numbers. Okay, great. So we've got our numbers in here. Awesome. Now we've got to ask ourselves about a couple of questions about this. Looking just at this by itself, with no other information given me at all. Apologies, people in Texas, but with these numbers right here, it looks like the Texans are a little bit more than 10 times as dumb as the Kansans. Something's wrong. Okay, I'll tell you what's wrong. We haven't accounted for the number of people. States of more than 10 times the number of people probably are going to have more than 10 times the number of victims. It kind of works out that way. So we need to put in another section right here, state population. P-O-P-U, P-O-P-U-L-A-T-I-O-N, population. Good, enter. And again, this lined up on the right because that's where we want it, because we're going to have countable numbers down. The countable number is going to be population. Okay, now we're going to copy the format from here. So what I'm going to do here, now this one's going to seem a little bit odd. I'm going to come up here and click on the B. I'm going to click on this little pink format thing. See that right there? Now I'm going to come over here and I'm going to click on the D. Now if I put in a number, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, it's going to put in those commas for me, okay? And that's why we did that. So you guys saw how I did that. Let's go back here to state population and go to the assignment. And I gave you a link right here, U.S. states ranked by population. Right-click on it, open link in new tab, and let's go find out how many people there are in California. Okay, 2024. Now, the thing is, we're using 2022 data, so we're probably better off using this right here, okay? I don't believe we can easily just select and copy that in. We might be able to. Control-C, come back over here. I'm not going to promise this will work because I didn't try this before I started. Hold the Control key and the Shift key and press the letter V. Okay, it worked. So that is certainly one way of putting them in. Remember that the states are not going to be in the same order as you see here. Some of them will be, some of them won't, okay? So go ahead and fill in the state population for each of these states, remembering that we're using the 2023 data right here, okay? Okay, so now we've gone ahead and put in the state information, and yeah, we see that Texas actually has slightly more than 10 times the number of people. So more than 10 times the number of victims, that kind of makes sense. We want to look at something else here because right now we're just sort of looking and saying, yeah, kind of whatever. We want to be a little bit more precise. We want the number of victims per capita. Okay, per is another word for divided, and then I'm going to hit enter. So victims per capita, so per person. How many victims are there? Sounds weird because you say, well, if the victim, that's one person. But how many victims are there per person? So obviously this is going to be in the form of a percentage. Okay? So knowing this is going to be in the form of a percentage, we're going to click directly on the letter E. And we're going to up here, we're going to click on format as percent. There we go. Now we're going to go ahead and put in our very first formula. This one's going to be really easy. We start all formulas with an equal sign. Go ahead and type in an equal sign. Good. Now we identify the cell by the column number and then the row number. So B2, so B2 over victims per capita, delta 2. Just that easy. Then I'm going to hit enter. Now it's going to ask, do you want to autofill? Yes, we do. We don't want to type all this in. We don't want to have to do all this time. Yes. Okay. Now there's another way to do that autofill, which I'm going to show you later on if it doesn't give you the autofill option. Okay, so now we have a better comparison. And yeah, it does look like people in Texas are just a little bit dumber than people in Kansas. Now that may not be entirely true, and I'll explain that as we move on. But we see how many, now don't forget, this isn't 21 in 100, okay? This is saying in every 100 there would be 0.21. So that's effectively 2 in 1,000, okay? Just keep trying to keep your numbers straight for you there, okay? To remind you what this means. So that out of every 1,000 people in Texas, there was 1.2 victims, okay? Or out of 10,000 people, there were 12 victims, okay? In Kansas, out of 10,000 people, there were 8 victims. Now, I will tell you the reason why states with a higher population tend towards these larger numbers is because if you're a scammer, where are you going to go? You're going to go where the people are. You're not going to go to North Dakota because that guy in North Dakota probably already knows about these scams. And he's the only person you got. Actually, there's only one person in North Dakota. After all, they have 2 senators. Of course, the senators aren't in North Dakota. They're in Washington, D.C. Anyways, moving along. Okay, so the next thing we want to know is total loss per capita. total loss per capita. How much for per person has people in that state lost to this kind of fraud? Okay, so we're going to go ahead and we're going to format and we're going to put this in. So we're going to start with an equal sign. All formulas and functions in a spreadsheet start with an equal sign. Now I'm going to show you the way I do this, and it may be easier for you if you're doing this on your Chromebook. It might not be easier. In which case, go ahead and type in C2. See how I clicked on C2 and it put that right in there for me. Now over. Oh, when I say over, a bit of confusion there. When you get more into your business classes, to tell you, people typically don't say divided by, they say over, and that's the slash, and you see that slash right next to the shift key. Okay, so and over the population, enter. And again, they want to know if we want to autofill that down, and yes, we do. So what that's telling us is that if you lived in Texas, that you that if you were an average person in Texas, you would have lost $25 to fraud, online fraud. Okay, it's one of those numbers that again doesn't mean every single person lost $25. It means that overall, if you added up all the people, multiplied it by this, you'd have the total number of loss in that state. Okay, let's come back over here. We're going to do one more. Victims per capita times 10. Oh, I see what I was doing. We're not okay. We want to make the chart work better, and we're going to end up doing something else over here in a moment. See, the thing is that this number and this number are so radically different. Let's go ahead and make the chart, and you'll see why this doesn't completely work for us. And I do want you making the chart. That's one of the things we're doing in this lesson. Okay. So I'm going to come over here and I'm going to select all of these. I did that by taking my cursor, putting it in the middle of cell A1, pressing and holding the left mouse button down and pulling down to the word Kansas and releasing the mouse button. The next part is kind of the trick, okay? Now I'm going to hold the control key down. I am holding the control key down. The control key is the key that says CTRL, and it's on the bottom left-hand corner. And use the one on the left because you're going to be doing something else with your right hand. On the bottom left-hand corner of the keyboard. So I'm holding the control key down. I'm pressing the left mouse button down. Or sorry, left. Now I'm dragging down, selecting all of those. I am still holding the control key down. I'm selecting all of these. Okay, so far so good. Now we're going to go ahead and make our first chart. Insert, chart. Okay, this is obviously not the kind of chart we wanted, okay? So I'm going to come over here to chart type. If you got something, if it doesn't look out like a column chart, I'm going to click on chart type. And I'm going to go down here until I see that very first one that says column chart. Okay, and I'm going to click on it. Great. Except we got a few things that aren't where we want them. So we need to kind of clean this up a little bit. So we're going to go ahead and change the name here. So I'm just going to double click on the name there. And you see how that took me to this thing called chart item. Okay. And I'm just going to change the name down here to online fraud. And I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to center align that right there, center align, and the rest of that looks okay. Usually the book wants all of these titles in 18-point font. It doesn't really matter that much, okay? But we have something else going on here. This doesn't quite do what we want. So we're now going to go back to setup here. We got to make a couple of changes here, okay? We're not using column E as labels. So I'm going to go ahead and uncheck that. Okay. Hold it. That was me playing with a button. Go down. Okay. Here's the problem. As we look at this chart, it is showing the total loss or the victims per capita. But remember, that is such a small number. We literally cannot see it. So we need to make some changes here. The first thing I need to do is move the chart off of my data. So I'm going to click on my chart somewhere other than on an element, basically like right about here. See, this is the table area. So come up here to where it's white. Don't go to a line. Go to somewhere where there's nothing else going on, okay? Like right about here. And I'm going to click there, press and hold. And now I'm going to just pull down with the mouse. I'm just pulling it down. I'm just getting the chart off of my data because I need to do some more stuff here with my data. Okay, I close that. So we need to go victims per capita. So let's go ahead and do that. Control C. Okay, but we're not done yet. Let me come up here to the formula bar right up here. And right there, we're just going to go times 1,000. Don't put a comma in there, okay? Don't put in a comma. Enter. Great. Now we're going to multiply this number here by 1,000, okay? So let's go ahead and do that. For here, we're going to type in equals. Two ways that we can go ahead and type in E2. We could have also simply clicked on it. Times, that's the little star, the asterisk, that's a shifted 8, 1,000. Don't put in a comma. Enter. Okay, and we're going to go ahead and accept that autofill, okay? Good. Now we need to make a change to our chart. So I'm going to come over here and click on my chart. I double click on it. And you may have needed to click on the three dots here and select edit chart. You can see when I double clicked, I didn't need to. I need to change where my victims per capita is going to look, okay? So let's come up here to my chart here. I need to look at this stuff right here instead of this one right here. Okay, so that's where I need to go. So I'm going to come over here to setup, and I'm going to come down here to where it says victims per capita, and I'm going to click on that right there. Okay, and this is going to sound weird. I'm going to click on remove. Now I'm going to click on add series. Okay, now I'm going to click on the checkerboard right here. It says select a range. Now, you see this box is shown up. I can go to the box here and sort of move it out of my way. What I need to do is scroll up so I can see this stuff right here. Once I can see G, I'm going to go to cell G1, press and hold the left mouse button down, and pull all the way down right there to G12. Okay? And then I'm going to click on OK. Good. I'm going to go ahead and close this and see how my chart looks. Okay, I can kind of see the little red bumps now, but they aren't that useful, okay? So that just doesn't tell, it isn't visual enough for me. I can't really tell which ones are twice as big as others. I mean, it's bigger, but is it twice as big? I don't know. So let's go ahead and change this. We're going to change this to 10,000. So I'm going to come up here where it says victims per capita per 10,000, 1,000. I'm just going to put in another 0, okay? That made it 10,000. Now, I'm going to come to here, and I'm going to come over here, and in the formula bar, I'm going to add one more 0. That made it 10,000. Enter. Now, here we're going to have to use, because see, it didn't give us the autofill question, so we've actually got to do this a different way. We're going to click in that cell. See how my cursor is touching the 0. I'm going to go to this little circle right here. When I cross that little circle, you see my cursor turns into a cross. When my cursor turns into a cross, I'm going to press and hold the left mouse button down, and I'm going to pull all the way down, see where my cross is, to that one right there, the bottom, and then I'm going to release. And you see it's going to automatically recalculate all these for me. It's really important to use formulas and not sit there trying to type in numbers, because let's face it, typing in numbers like that would be miserable. Okay, we're going to round this down a little bit, by the way. So while we still get these selected, we'll just come up here and go to 2 decimal places. There we go. So we're going to 2 decimal places. It doesn't change the chart at all. Now, let's just scroll down and have a look at our chart. Now I can easily see it. You can see that right here, it's put that in for us, okay? Now here, you might have wanted to put a comma in there to make it a little bit more clear. So I'm just going to go up here and double click on that. And I'll put it right there and comma. You don't type the commas in the formulas, okay? And you can see that it fixed it for you there. That's nice. Okay, we're almost done with this one. Now I'm going to click on it. I'm going to click on the 3 dots, and we're going to come down here to move to own sheet. And there we go. It's on its own worksheet. And that looks good. Victims per capita, but that's not quite true, okay? So I think we need to get rid of these 2 right here, because that just isn't quite true. So let's go ahead and double click on victims per capita. You see that it opened up the horizontal label there for me. I'm going to backspace over that. And I'm going to do the same thing to the vertical one. So the vertical one's right here. I could double click on it like you just saw me do, Or I can come up here because I know I'm in the chart and axes title section. I can click on horizontal and go to vertical, and I can just get rid of it right there. Okay, that also got. Okay, now we're not quite done. Let's go to series. We want to put some numbers on this chart. Okay, so click on series. Right? And now we're going to click on data layers. Okay, and we want to position them outside end. Okay, and okay, that looks okay. To tell you, I do feel that having the decimals kind of makes us look a little bit more cluttered. So we're going to we're going to round it completely out and get rid of those decimals so that it looks a little bit better. Okay. Anything else we really want to do? I don't really think there's a whole lot else we want to do here. I mean, if you want to, so I'm going to go ahead and pause this. I mean, if you wanted to change the color of these, you could have. You could double click on these, and you can go ahead and change the color there. Let's see here. Series total loss, and we can change the color, the fill color if you want to do. Right now it's set to auto, but you can change it right there. So again, where I saw where I, it's not, that's not important. Let's go back and remember I said that we really want to get around these out because on this it doesn't look good on the chart. Let's go to video example again. We're going to come up here. We're going to click on the G right there, and we're going to come over here and we're just going to decrease again. Now let's go look at our chart. Yeah, that looks a lot better. Okay, maybe it's not as precise, but it sure looks better. Okay? So we've got the chart done. Now we have one more thing to do here, and for that I need to move you. There we go. Okay. The reason I had to move that was because I want you to be able to get at this little button right here. Okay. I just want you to click on that button right there, and that opened a new worksheet. So far, you've got three now. You've got the example, you've got the chart, and now we got one. We're just going to call this one tips. Okay, tips. That easy. And then we're going to go ahead. Now we're going back to the project, by the way. Okay, just to let you know. Now we're coming back and getting this stuff. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and select all of these just like this. Control C. Come back over here to our spreadsheet. There it is, spreadsheet. And click there in the cell A1 and paste Control V. Okay. And now we're going to start doing some formatting here. Okay. Okay, so on this first one here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to select from A1 to D1. So I'm going to move the cursor into the middle of cell A1. I'm going to press and hold and drag over to D1, just like that. Now, much like we've done on the other tables, we're going to go ahead and merge those. Then we're going to center align those. Center align and 14 point. Go ahead and make that bold. Good. So that's that one. Okay. Now we're going to get rid of a whole bunch of these empty rows that got copied in. We copied it in. So I'm going to go ahead and click directly on the 2, selecting all of row 2. Now I'm going to carefully right click on the 2 and select delete row. I'm going to do the same thing here with 3. Click on the 3, right click, delete row. Click on the 4, right click, delete row. Click on the 5, right click, delete row. Now, if you accidentally deleted a row of text on it, remember you can just use undo. Right click on the 6, delete row. Right click on the 7, delete row. Okay, great. We're partway there already. Now we're going to go ahead and we're going to select. We're going to select from A2 to D2. Okay. Now keep in mind the text is actually in column A on all of these. Okay. So I select from A2 to D2. Now I'm going to come over here and I'm going to merge the cells. I'm not going to center them. Okay. And now I'm going to come over to this one here, Format Painter, and I'm going to click over here. Make sure that you're in A3 when you do this. So basically be like touching the number 3. Good. Now we have one more thing we need to do in this cell because we're not, and then that'll be for all of them. This one, you note that some of the text went outside the cell and has now been cut off. So we're going to come over here to Format, come down to Wrapping. Yeah, we did this before a little bit earlier in this lesson. And select Wrap. There we go. Now we've got all this set up. Go ahead and click on the Format Painter again. And be sure that you're over here in the column A. And it's kind of hard to see what column you're in. That's why I say that you're really better off just going to the number there and click Format Painter and click Format Painter and click Format Painter and click. Okay, almost done. Now, the only thing that's left, I'm going to click on this one here, and we're going to come up here to the formula bar, okay? And right there, I'm just going to type in a number 1. Good. Enter. Now, I'm going to select this right here. Note that by hitting enter, I didn't move the mouse much at all. 2. Enter. Now, you see my mouse is already where I want it to be. 3. Enter. 4. Enter. 5. Enter. And 6. Enter. And these are all really good rules to keep in mind, having a strong password and changing it often. And I want to mention this one if you're, because it's in another lesson, but what we have found with passwords, a lot of people put in like leet speak, replacing the numbers or letters of numbers and stuff like that, thinking they're making a strong password. Really, they're not, because I'm not going to go into what a dictionary attack is, but it's very exposed to dictionary attacks. Instead, what we have found makes the best password is a long phrase that you can remember. Maybe a poem, a passage, a line out of a poem that you remember. So it makes the longer it is, the more secure it is, because basically the password cracking programs start on short words and all possible permutations of short words. Then they go to slightly longer and slightly longer. Well, if you've got something that's long, like a phrase out of a phrase out of a song, not the name of the song, but a line out of it, of the lyrics, something like that, you have a lot better protection than people who just put in a short password and think it's super because we used a little bit of leet speak. Okay. Let's see. Be wise about your posts. Yeah, I mean, I always tell you guys this, that if somebody walked up on you on the street and asked you for this kind of information, your response would be to look at them, and maybe if you said anything to them at all, be like, "Who are you?" That's how you should be thinking. Installing and running your firewall and antivirus. Don't download from untrustworthy sources. Like I tell you, don't go for Hacker Jim's super aimbot, because he's already told you he's a cheater. I mean, what more do you need to know? If you want to download something, we can talk more about GitHub later on. It's one of the safer places for downloading kind of strange programs. If it isn't a mainstream kind of thing, GitHub probably has it. And just using common sense. If it looks sketchy, dodgy, if the old phrase, if it looks too good to be true, it probably is. With all of that said, you have now created a pretty awesome spreadsheet about crime and victims of cybercrime. You've created a chart to illustrate it, and you've put in some tips for how to avoid being a victim. And so you are done. Have a great day.